Let's continue to reflect on the latest crime statistics released by the police minister earlier today. We're joined by Craig Perdersen. He's head of forensics at TCG Digital Forensics. Craig, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. So when releasing these figures this afternoon, the police minister asking the question, what went wrong? And he went on to say some of the problems include, or rather the solutions include, improving working conditions of officers, ensuring the availability of the required tools of trade to respond to crime, and rooting out officers who choose to intentionally fail communities they are meant to serve. From the work that you do, is this an accurate reflection that the problem actually here is that our police are not capacitated, and so people are just running amok because you think you can get away with it?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. I also think the minister's actually being a little bit simplistic in his analysis of where the real problem rises. Everything comes back to the foundation. Recruiting standards, training standards, and mentoring to get the right caliber of person to be doing the job that they're correctly trained to do, and that they have ongoing training in that department, and they're able to advance themselves and deliver a professional service. And I think that's what's really lacking at the moment.
When you hear that 6,083 people were killed in just 3 months in South Africa, what does it tell you?
I think the number says enough for itself, especially when you consider, let's look at that. We've got a population, let's broadly estimated at 60 million people. That is 0.1% of our population that have been murdered in the first 3 months of the year. For each murder, there's also going to be one suspect or one perpetrator. That means 0.1% of the population could also be criminals walking around. I mean, it's a frightening statistic. And you've got to also see that in the light of the attempted murder figures, which are also up by 24, almost 25%. It's indicative of the extent of the problem, really.
In the first 3 months of 2022, 10,818 people were raped in South Africa. What do we need to understand about this, especially from a forensics point of view?
I think that in itself is a really, really, really big red light, because let's face it, rape internationally is accepted as being a highly underreported crime. There are all sorts of socioeconomic and psychological boundaries to the reporting of rape. Sometimes rape's only reported years after it happens, when the victim actually has the courage to come forth and relive that trauma again. So the fact that rape is up by 13% is a big problem, because the real figure is probably even more. It's probably greater than that.
Property-related crimes, or property-related crimes increasing by 0.1%, with burglary at non-residential premises declining by 6.4%. A silver lining?
Look, we can expect to see the increase in property-related crime over the last quarter of the year, where businesses are closed over the December cycle, still into the January period, which falls within this reporting window. So the property-related crime being up, it's not great, but it is to be expected in the final quarter.
When we talk about law and order, and we look at these statistics and some of the comments that come through from the police, does it appear that we have neither in this country? That is a difficult statement to make, or a difficult question to even ask, right? Because this is South Africa. This is home, essentially, a beautiful country that should be running well and should be working. But does it appear that law and order, where it's concerned, we are not where we should be? And how do we get there?
Yeah, I think you've actually hit the nail on the head. And the question of law and order in South Africa, and do we actually have it, runs paired with the question of do we have safety and security. If you look at the safety and security aspect, it's actually anomalous. Safety and security is how safe you feel. If I ask you on a scale of 1 to 10 how safe you feel in your home, right now it could be an 8. If I tell you that your next door neighbor was brutally assaulted in a home yesterday, you just didn't know about it, suddenly your perception of your safety and security is going to dive, and it's going to be at a 4. The environmental factors and considerations and the elements of risk haven't really changed. It's perception that changes. And if you had to poll the average South African and ask how safe do they feel, how secure do they feel, the results are going to be pretty dismal. We don't have enough visible presence on the road in terms of visible policing. We don't have a very good uptake on 10-111. If you speak to most people, they'll tell you that they've given up on phoning 10-111 as our key entry point to reporting crime. So that tells me that we're lacking in the aspect of safety and security and that sense of being safe. And at the same time, do we have law and order? Well, that comes from the top down. It always does and it always will. And in order to increase that, we've got to see that everybody is obeying the rule of law, from the top of the country to the bottom of the country and everybody in between, and that the law is applied equally to all. And that, in terms of a public relations aspect, ongoing investigations, and really delivering on its mandate, is something that SAPS needs to focus on, to see that the law is applied evenly to everybody within the confines of South Africa.
The police further stating that the statistics are not only to quantify crime or create debate in society, they also serve as a call, these figures, of action for government, businesses, NGOs, civil society and communities to come on board in the fight against crime and, I guess, turning the tide and fixing the country. So when it comes to you and I, what is it that we can then do, right? Whether it's even participating in just a community meeting or, you know, setting up community policing forums, if you will. Are we as active as South Africans, as good as we are at complaining?
To be honest, we do have active partnerships between communities and the police. The CPF structures you mentioned are a great example of that. But it's always the same people doing the work. It's 10 people maybe attending the meetings, pushing, driving, wanting to get things better, and 300 people shouting from the sidelines saying, yay, keep going, good work, but not actually getting up and getting involved and participating. If we want safety and security and the levels of crime to increase and the levels of crime to decrease, we've got to get involved. We've got to stop the culture of, I bought this cheap, it fell off the back of the bus. If we stop people from buying stolen goods, you're going to kill the market. If you kill the market, then your property-related crime is going to go down. We've got to kill those markets. We've got to kill the culture of acceptability that goes with that and hold people to account and participate as communities. Be actively involved in CPFs, neighborhood watch structures, community initiatives. Get up and take the time to not just sit on the sidelines and let somebody else do it. Bring new ideas in, bring new perspectives, and work together. Because nobody's ever going to care as much about your security and the safety of you and your family as you do.
Craig Perdersen is Head of Forensics at TCG Digital Forensics. A big thank you for joining us this afternoon.